تفضل دكتور عياد.
مرحبا. خالد عياد، دكتوراه علوم سياسية وباحث في دكتوراه التاريخ وباحث في دكتوراه الفلسفة. If I may, I would like to address Your Excellency in English, sir. You said that this part of the region will shape the future. Why did you put it alongside Japan? Japan is a country from the south. If we say that Japan, that's what your colleague said at the beginning of the lecture. We cannot be alongside Japan. That's number one. Number two, the immigration to Europe. It's not shaping, it is killing Europe. The immigration from the Middle East to Europe nowadays is killing Europe. That is why I think Trump has addressed this issue perfectly when he said that the culture of Europe is dying due to immigration. And
ما حكى هذا. طيب دكتور عياد كمل.
And do you think, sir, that power is essential to confront the immigration influx from the Middle East?
شكرا عياد.
Thank you very much.
شكرا أستاذ خالد. سؤال بالوسط تفضل.
مساء الخير.
Yes. Okay. اوكي تفضل.
ايوه
مرة واحدة.
مساء الخير بروفيسور. لما نحكي انه المشاكل الدولية،
الاسم الكريم
عادل التونسي، لما نحكي انه المشاكل الدولية راح نبطل قادرين نحلها بصورة بين الدول، يعني هل هذا بيعني انه الليفاثيان اللي قدم لنا اياه توماس هوبز بطل فعال؟ هذا واحد. اثنين، لما نحكي انه المشاكل اليوم باوروبا هي مشاكل اجتماعية، هل هي نفس المشاكل اللي قدمها شبينغلر زمان بكتابه The Decline of the Western Civilization؟ فهمت؟ يفولو؟
شكرا.
تمام.
شكرا عادل. طيب ناخذ الأجوبة وناخذ بعدين وجبة الأسئلة. تفضل بروفيسور برتران.
Merci d'abord de toutes ces questions que j'apprécie. Oh yes, I forgot that, you know. I get tired, sorry for that. And I forgot that now French language is quite excluded from the international conferences. Well, first of all, I am very grateful to you for all these questions, which are very stimulating, and we need a very long debate for dealing with all these problems. Of course, sir, I consider that the communication is one of the main parameters of the new international relations. You know, the old international system was made of distance and territory. The new international system is made of communication, which is overcoming distance. And for the political actors and the rulers, it's very difficult and quite impossible to change their grammar and moving from distance to this simultaneity and this new kind of communication. But I would not overestimate the role of electronic in the new war. Of course, many researchers are dealing with this issue, but you know, if you take into account the present conflict as we can observe in Sahel or in the Middle East and so on, electronic dimension is not playing an important role. These new wars are even more human, I mean by that, using elementary human instruments than sophisticated. And it's even a regression to the very old and traditional kind of conflictuality. Well, Middle East, as you mentioned. First of all, I think that the main feature of the Middle East conflicts by now is an incredible failure of power. It's quite extraordinary to observe that the United States is now out of the conflict. is quite unable. USA was unable in Iraq, unable in Afghanistan, is now obliged to negotiate with Taliban, which is a strong humiliation for the superpower, and is not even able to suggest the new ways of conflict solving. And when I mentioned that power is getting powerless, I didn't have in mind regional powers, because regional powers were considered and are still considered as weak states. If you take into account the American diplomacy, they consider that there are no regional powers except Israel in the Middle East. And this is something very important to see how now regional powers are challenging international powers. And you're right, I will have to say that I mentioned international powers, as to say those powers which plan to rule the entire world. Russia is back. But Russia is back in Syria only at the military level and is not able to enforce peace in Syria. Mr. Putin would love to have a diplomatic success, but Russia is not able to play a role in the diplomatic arena. And that's why the tricky Putin is trying to catch the help of two regional powers, Turkey and Iran, through the Astana or Sochi process. So we have a regression of the role of global power in favor of regional powers and of local powers. The new aspect of the world is to give new resources to local actors. When I visited Mali, a very clever man, was the head of the Gao Museum, told me, you know, in our country we have a proverb. And this proverb says that it's impossible to shave the head of someone in his absence. Try to do that, and you will see that it's impossible. And the revenge of the local actor now is that he must be associated to the decision. And if we do as previously it was done, that's to say excluding the local actors and deciding for him, the conflict is strengthened, is deepened, is reinforced rather than solved. And when, sir, you say the Arab world is neither north, neither south. Sorry, there is, yes, I don't totally agree with you. Why? Because I think, and this is also, you mentioned geopolitics, I think that geopolitics is over. It's finished. That's to say, to build a vision of the world by mobilizing geographical criteria is quite impossible. On a geographical point of view, of course, the Arab world is, as you mentioned, between north and south. But if you abandon geopolitics, which is something of my grandfather or my grand-grandfather, you consider a new definition of south. For me, south is all the countries which were not included in the Westphalian system, that's to say, the old international system, which were dominated, colonized, or marginalized. And for this reason, even China is not at north, but at south, even if it has the second rank in the GDP. And that's why Japan is definitely north, because Japan was never dominated by the old powers and cooperated or competed the same with them. And that's why the G7 is constituted by 7 northern countries, and I include Japan in that. Japan is now the far, far west, not the far, far east, and is not south but north. And once I set the question to a Chinese diplomats, would you agree to integrate the G7? And they told me, no, certainly not, because we don't want to be considered as the northern countries. We leave that to Japan. Very interesting, you know? And from your question, there is something very important, of course, to deal with, is it promising or not? When I say that now the global south is ruling, I have never said that it was a success or a promise of success. We are in the middle of the bridge. And the result may be a better world or a worse one. We don't know. There is no sense of history. That's why I'm not interested at all by Mr. Fukuyama and all these old American dreamers. The problem is, from the conflict, it's always comes a new history, worse or better. It depends on the way the conflict will be solved. So it would be very long to reply to your very important question, but I would say that if we observe Arab Spring, there are some very promising perspectives, but also some very dangerous results. I'm not sure that the Sisi dictatorship is a good exit, but maybe what we are now observing in Sudan or even in Tunisia is something more promising. Ladies and gentlemen, it depends on you. It depends on you, not on me. I belong to the past. It depends on you. Migration. Sir, don't worry. Migration is a very good opportunity for Europe. It's good. I hope that we'll be able to promote, of course, a monitored, a governed migration, not an anarchical migration. But migration is good. Have you seen the success of the Socialist Party in Portugal? Why? Because they are in an economic growth and they need more and more migrants. More and more migrants are going to Portugal and are building the new richness of Portugal. We need migration for a better understanding among all the cultures in the world. I am the son of a migrant man. He married a French lady. The result is not so bad. You know, if you want to understand Europe, you have to keep in mind that Europe is dominated by fear. By fear. Because Europe was ruling the world, and people are now understanding, are now realizing that they don't rule the world. And so they are afraid. They are afraid of globalization. They have a fear of change. And that's why they close the doors, they close of the windows, and they close everything. But this is not the solution. The solution is to open the window and open the door. And I am quite convinced that this is the future of the world. But now, we have the evidence that in any way, power was not able to contain migration. Migration is stronger than power. And we can see that every day in the world. And for this reason, I'm sorry, I don't remember well. There is, yes, sir. There is no decline of the Western countries. No one is declining. No one is declining. No one is decaying. Only the world is changing. But do you think that change is a decay? Resistance to change, resilience to change is the first step of the decay. You will see in Europe, we will accept the change, and so we will abandon the idea of a decay.